Welcome to the BAM Fight Club podcast, episode number 1. I'm Colby Callahan, along with Fernando Juarez. We're going to be going over the fight preview for UFC Fight Night, the first fight of the year in 2022. It'll be on January 15th, airing at 1 p.m. Pacific on ESPN and ESPN+. Okay, so our first fight of the night is between Brown and Rosa, and I went in and watched the last fight for both of these fighters, and I'll start with TJ Brown, who's the favorite to win. His last fight was in May 2021, where he won by decision against Kamaka, and I really liked, very quickly, he seemed like he had some really nice feints early on in round 1, so I like how he's trying to do setups for his strikes. I like some of his leg lock attempts when he goes to the ground. He seems to have a pretty well-rounded game. He wasn't super fast on strikes, so he's not very speedy, but he had a pretty high volume. He had Kamaka in a lot of trouble from strikes in the second round before he got rocked himself. It was a good back-and-forth fight. And Brown was also able to use Kimura attempts in multiple rounds when he was on the bottom in order to get back up. And had pretty good lateral movement also in his stand-up. So I liked a lot what I saw from TJ Brown. Seems like a promising up-and-comer. With Rosa, his last fight was October 2021. He had a loss by decision. The thing I noticed first off with Rosa is that he throws looping punches. He definitely looks like a grappler when he's striking. He had a leg lock attempt, just like Brown did in his last his last fight. Rosa backs up to avoid strikes instead of moving side to side. So Rosa's striking definitely left something to be desired, but he's known for his grappling. But even though he's known for his grappling, he spent the entire second round, it seemed like, on grappling defense. He could not get any grappling offense going. And he was slow and steady, not very explosive. He started his third round with a brutal spinning elbow, but he was not able to finish. So if I had to pick, I'm definitely going to be going with Brown to win this one. Brown had the better lateral movement when it comes to strikes than Rosa. Brown definitely looked hungrier. He had a higher paced fight. Both seem to have decent jiu-jitsu skills, so I think this is definitely leaning towards Brown. What do you think, Frank?
Yeah, I was looking at Brown's record, and he's like 15-8-0, and I'm like, that's a lot of fights for basically being a newcomer in UFC. And I saw his last fight was a loss by unanimous decision, a loss by decision before that. But, you know, the record shows he's got experience. Like, to me, anyone who can go that long and not get knocked out and, you know, be on the higher stage with the UFC. Yeah, he had some great diversity. I don't think that he's like specifically good at anything at striking or grappling. Just seemed kind of very balanced. Rosa, I was looking at, you know, he's at 0-2 in the UFC. His last fights have been decision. So I feel like he's kind of one that doesn't really push the pace. You mentioned his kind of looping punches. I think once people figure that out, they just keep him at bay, and he's, you know, essentially pretty predictable. Brown, I think, will take this, just has the experience, you know, has a diversity. He's more of a balanced fighter at this point.
Yeah, so you think, even though I think Rosa has a few fights in the UFC, you still think Brown kind of looked like a more experienced fighter?
Yeah, like you mentioned, the higher volume. Like, he just looks like he's adjusting, adapting. Rosa, for the most part, he's going to grapple. He's going to throw one punch at a time. And, you know, I hope he's able to change that. But Brown just seems like he's just got more experience or more versatility. That result against Kai, you know, Kai's moving on up in the rankings, and I think that showing alone is better than any of the showings that Rosa has had. So I think just gauging it against, you know, higher level opposition, I expect Brown to, I would assume, I'll say Brown by decision. Yeah.
Okay. And the next fight is between Kelleher and Croom. Kelleher is a big favorite to win in this fight. His last fight was in August 2021, where he had a win by decision against Pilarte. I noticed in his last fight, he had really good ground and pound and top pressure. And the entire time he was on top, he was staying safe from subs. Croom was definitely looking for submissions all throughout the fight and could not lock anything in. So Kelleher is definitely an experienced fighter. He had good aggression. I really like watching his fights. I think he's an exciting fighter, even though he hasn't made it up into the very top ranks. Definitely looking forward to seeing this fight. And the only trouble I really saw with him in his last fight was, for some reason, the guillotine hunting, which seems to be the bane of so many guys. It's so tempting to see that guillotine, see that neck hanging out there and then want to go for it. And he was completely dominating from the top. And the only time he seemed to get in trouble was when he tried to go for the guillotine and put himself in a bad position. And for Croom, his last fight was in February 2021, a loss by decision against Caceres, where he kicked off the main card for Gahn versus Rosenstruck. And what I noticed in his fight was that he really started off with some really weak wrestling technique. Like, these were horrible takedown shots. There weren't really good excuses for it. He definitely was not tired in the first round. There were just no setups. He just bent over at the hips, threw his arms out, and anybody with any kind of wrestling experience sees that they're going to see right off the bat that it was pretty terrible. And he also ended up becoming exhausted from his takedown attempts. So he put a lot of energy into takedowns, which I understand that was his strategy, clearly, was to wrestle, because he was going against a pretty good striker. But he couldn't finish his takedown attempts. This striker, Caceres, was able to stuff all these takedown attempts. And it looked like Croom didn't really like to strike at all. So in this fight, I think the odds make sense. Kelleher being the more aggressive fighter, when he is able to get guys down, is able to apply pressure. Croom, although he's also a wrestler, it seemed like he was just not able to inflict damage when he was on top. So I think if Kelleher can stuff takedowns and escape, he has a lot more in his offensive arsenal. And one thing to keep in mind here, too, I think Kelleher is going up a weight class. I believe. I'm not 100% sure. I think he is, though. And he was a short notice fighter. So the fact that this is a wrestling match, Croom will have the advantage in terms of weight. But my prediction is that Kelleher is going to catch Croom with some strikes when Croom comes in with his terrible takedown attempts. So I'm going with Kelleher to win. What do you think?
Yeah, I was looking. Kelleher's last two fights have been decisions, and but he's got a pretty good record, like 10 submission wins, 8 KO wins. His most losses have come from submissions, so that I don't think will be a concern, considering, like as you pointed out, Croom's wrestling is probably his weakest. He just doesn't set it up at all. And for anyone wondering, Colby is a wrestler at heart, from like old school style. Probably Google him if Google was around at the time, but yeah. So when somebody with experience in grappling goes, there's no setup at all at this level, it's just not going to work. Especially with Kelleher just having the diversity that he does. The only trouble he gets is when people have a good submission game, and Croom doesn't have that. The weight, I think, might play a factor, depending on how much. I don't know how much Croom usually cuts, but might benefit Kelleher as well. I just think there's times where you've seen fighters come in on short notice and just blast through somebody because they just have a lot to prove and seize the opportunity. But if Croom was somebody who was ready for whoever and was prepared to wrestle a big guy and fight a big guy, that might mean some trouble for Kelleher. Either way, I would say Kelleher is my choice. Just
Okay, so you think the fact that Kelleher is going up weight class, maybe because he's not going to be cutting, that his conditioning is going to be better when it comes to wrestling?
Yeah, just and his diversity. Like Kroom, I think we're gonna expect him to try to, he doesn't like to strike, and his wrestling just isn't good enough for him to fall back on. Kelleher just has the resume that's more diverse, and I could see Kelleher winning by submission. To be honest, um,
By submission? Okay.
we'll see.
And our next fight is Mcgee versus Brahimage. And I went back and looked at the fights that both of these guys had in their last fight. And I'll start with Brahimage. I was really impressed. First I'll say his last fight was August 2021, where he won by sub in the first round. And when I was watching that fight, he was completely dominant. He had excellent top control. He had good passes. He didn't wait around to make his passes. He just took the guy down, established control immediately, made passes, and then was able to move to submission and lock it in quite quick, which was really impressive to get a submission in the first round. It's easier in some ways, I think, because both guys are dry. They're not slippery, so you can hold a choke in, I think, a little bit easier. But also in the first round, that's when both guys are at maximum strength. So it's from that standpoint pretty difficult to get a sub in unless you have excellent technique. So I was really impressed with what I saw from Brahimage. With Mcgee, he's a veteran. His last fight was May 2021, a win by decision over Silva. It says his specialization is BJJ, but definitely in his last fight, it seemed like he preferred stand-up. He had really good grappling defense. He had kind of a diversity of strikes and techniques that I saw. He even attempted a flying roundhouse, so I think he was watching too many Patrick Swayze movies or something. It didn't even come close to hitting the guy, but it looked really awesome when I saw it.
The attempt was worth
I really
applause.
I enjoyed watching that. He had decent striking technique, so he wasn't coming in with these huge wind-ups. There's straight punches, really simple 1-2 combos, and he's known for his conditioning. He was able to go all 3 rounds and didn't show signs of slowing up. So I think Mcgee's good all around. I think this is a close fight, as the odds indicate. Brahimage coming in at -120, and I'm going to pick Brahimage to win this one, just because I think his grappling technique that he demonstrated in the last fight was really impressive. What do you think?
Yeah, I saw Brahimage 9 wins by submission. Just looks like that dude's just built to grapple. Like, you just see it in his shoulders, his arms, all that stuff. Only has 1 loss by KO, 2 by decision. He just seems like he definitely knows his grappling is solid. That's his go-to, consistent. With Court Mcgee, it's funny because I put, he's a well-known, durable veteran. These guys been fighting for years, it seems like. Even though he's got lots of decision wins, they're exciting. He's not one of those fighters that you're like, oh, it's going to go, just lay and pray, right? But, yeah, one of his most, surprising wins, anyone who's watched any fighting from way back in the day, Carlos Condit. I thought Condit was going to blow through him. I thought Condit, just had the experience. Condit's fought GSP, fought all these other guys, been a champion in other organizations. And when he lost, and I didn't think it was a close loss. I thought it was pretty decidedly that Court beat him. It made me sad, but I was like, damn, Court really can hang up there and make somebody like that, who I thought was high level and was going to beat him easily, just look like he just didn't belong anymore. And I'm sure I believe Condit's moved on since then and retired. And but Court, I think. I don't know if I'd consider him a grappler. I just think he can hang with whatever, a little bit of striking, a little bit of wrestling. I'd like to see him win. I just think Brahimage just obviously has that specialty, and I don't think Court's good enough of a striker to keep it standing. Brahimage, I would say by submission.
Okay. And the next fight is between Pickett and Holmes. Pickett's last fight was October 2021 with a win by decision over Staropoli. He's a southpaw. In his last fight, he stuffed a takedown right off the bat, but got stuck in the clinch quite a bit. His head kicks look really scary. This guy seems like a really powerful striker, but for as tall as he is, he seemed like he really had trouble keeping his opponent on the outside, even though I feel like his opponent gave him a lot of opportunities. He didn't use his jab effectively. When he did throw his strikes, like I said, it looks like he could definitely put someone to sleep if he connects. But I'd be very curious, since he's going up against Holmes, who I think is a similar height, who will have a similar reach, if Holmes will be able to more easily use his jab and use his reach to stay on the outside and pick it apart. Holmes is the favorite in this fight at a -150. Holmes' last fight was just in November 2021 with a first round KO over Patey. He is on a win streak, but it is his first UFC fight. And this dude has a killer mustache. That was definitely the first thing I noticed about Holmes when I watched his last fight. Hopefully he's going to keep it, because I feel like that could be like a signature look for this guy. Like Sugar Sean O'Malley's got his crazy hair. This dude's mustache could take him very far, I feel like. I hope he keeps it. He's got it. Holmes had a really good clinch game, so I didn't get to see him strike in a way that I think the way it's going to play out with Pickett is there's probably going to be more striking in this Holmes' next fight with Pickett than in his previous fight. So I'm kind of curious how that's going to work out. So when Pickett did let go, the few times they did in striking, it seemed like he had pretty good accuracy and power. Holmes seemed to have a tighter striking defense. Oh yeah, so that was definitely a thing I noticed about Pickett, was he seemed to have a very loose striking defense. And maybe it's because his shoulders are so wide. This guy is definitely stacked. Looks like a really strong guy. But just watch when he first comes out in the first round against Holmes, where his hand placement is. When I'm talking about Pickett here, it seems like he just leaves holes open all the time from his striking. Holmes definitely had a tighter striking defense, just looked like a more traditional kind of boxing defense, which I think will benefit him when he's going against Pickett, who is more of a striker. But Holmes had the better clinch grappling, and I am going to pick Holmes to win in this one, because I think he's going to get in on the clinch. Just like in Pickett's last fight, Pickett let the guy Staropoli get him into a clinch quite a bit, even though Pickett ended up winning. I think if that's Holmes' strategy and he just executes a little bit better once he gets into the clinch in terms of launching some offense, I think Holmes is going to win on this one.
Yeah, I saw Pickett. Most people are going to know him from Dana White's Contender Series. He built up a pretty good record. I see he's got eight wins by KO of his 12 wins. Like you mentioned, he swings with ill intention. Like, he kicks hard, he punches hard. He also has, I don't know if you remember Phil Davis, who's now fighting for Bellator, but he's got that build, like you mentioned, kind of like Dwight Howard, shoulders, long arms. Like, it's just gangly looking in a way, but you're just like, he can obviously put it together, and if he can connect. Holmes, I thought he's like lost one time and then went on a 7-fight win streak and just been submitting people, and has a couple wins by other ways, but rear naked choke and guillotine. And with somebody with long arms and who throws as hard as Pickett does, I think Holmes is going to be able to tire him out and then latch on to something. I would be picking Holmes by rear naked. He's just been practicing that a lot, and like I mentioned, with somebody who swings as wild, is powerful, strong. You mentioned he doesn't have the cleanest, tightest boxing. Pickett doesn't. I see Holmes being able to get in there and use his grappling to tie him up and win by rear naked. Yeah, it's unfortunate that Pickett just doesn't have those, like, almost seems like the basic principles of boxing, like keep it tight, keep it clean. It's just swing hard, go all out, and I don't know. We'll see. Holmes just definitely is good at submission, so if I'm going to pick somebody who's good at what they do, it's going to be Holmes.
And starting off the main card, we have Aggio versus Brito. Aggio is a slight favorite in this one. He's coming off a loss by decision in May of 2021. His specialization is BJJ. And Brito is on a win streak, with his last fight being a win by decision in Dana White's Contender Series in August of 2021. So how did you analyze this?
I was just, went back and watched a couple of Aggio and Brito's fights, and, Aggio, he did lose in May, but his last 5 fights have been by decision, so it's not like I don't feel like he's obviously durable, he can hang in there. He's got balanced wins between submissions and decisions, so, he's not a striker, he's, using his grappling, kind of pacing himself. With Brito he's a little more impressive. He hasn't lost in his last 12 fights. And that includes a draw. So I don't know if most people include a draw as a win or a loss. But also he's a shoot box fighter. Anyone who knows MMA from way back in the day, Pride, Rules, Vanderlei, Shogun, Ninja, Hua, all them. Even Anderson got started with shoot box. So Brito to me has the momentum coming in. He's going to be somebody who can take a punch, who probably, is the type to bite down and swing hard. He's got a balanced record between his wins between KOs and submissions. I personally am going to go with Brito. I hope that someday we can start kind of getting that old school style of, like, the wrestlers dominate, or the Brazilians dominate, or, whoever, that one style starts dominating. And Brito is very exciting, and I think everyone at heart always wants to watch a shoot box fighter win. And those guys, it doesn't mean much for their durability, because you see a lot of those fighters, now in their 30s and 40s and showing the signs of training.
Definitely hard.
And just like physically, you just see it. They just have aged horribly. but so far so good. I hope I'm going to choose Brito by KO.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with that pick. I think just based on the momentum coming off of the Contender Series, Aggio coming off a loss, I think Brito's got the momentum, and I'm going to pick him to win as well. Next on the main card is Bush versus Borchev. And Bush is a slight underdog on this one. His last fight was April 2021. A loss by decision against Hubbard during his UFC debut. And Borchev, his last fight was October 2021, a win by KO in the second round on Dana White's Contender Series. So how did you break down this fight?
I always try to look at their records and see what kind of momentum they're carrying into the fight. And, Bush, 8-3 with wins by submission and TKO recently. It's always very good when you're winning more than you're losing, especially, at this level, especially on the main card. I would say these guys aren't as well known as other fighters. I don't know much about them. I had to go back and do some digging. Borchev, his last 3 wins have been by KO, TKO. With that being said, I think, both guys have recent wins, and I think just Borchev is, as a favorite. He's a favorite for a reason. Like, KO, TKO in the last 3 fights. Let's see if he can carry it. I think the Dana White Contender Series, you're going to start seeing a lot of fighters coming from that show and having success, and that seems to be a good platform where a lot of these new fighters are coming from. Especially with like the Ultimate Fighter kind of going by the wayside. I think that's 2 or 3 fighters on this card that are coming from the Contender Series, and they've been successful so far. So I feel like that might be the future of like the feeder program going in. It seems like they're pulling a lot of those fighters up, and I'm gonna pick Borchev.
Okay, and I'd be curious to see what the stats are on people's or fighters' debut in the UFC after they've come off of Dana White Contender Series. Because just because you get a win in the Contender Series doesn't necessarily mean you're going to fight in the UFC. You've got to win in a particular kind of way in order to impress Dana, in order to get that contract. So I agree. I feel like momentum is going to really play a role here. Bush, the fact that his first debut fight in the UFC was a loss, that's got to be a big, really difficult to deal with psychologically. Borchev, even though he hasn't fought in the UFC, he kind of has with the Dana White Contender Series, so I feel like he's got all that confidence coming in, and he's coming in like you said, off of a KO, which has definitely got to boost the confidence. So I feel like this is just a pick based off of psychology of each fighter coming into it, and I think Borchev has got the momentum, and the odds are definitely in his favor for a reason.
Well, I think like also with Contender Series, Dana White is watching you. You know that if you don't win in a good way, there's like that's it. Like that's the goal is for a lot of people to reach the UFC. And when the boss is there, you either show up or get out. And the guys who are showing up are getting this opportunity, and hopefully a lot of them aren't taking it for granted and realizing like, hey, I made it. No, it's all right. You impressed the boss once, impress him again. But I would say probably fighting in front of a crowd, it's got to be up there with fighting in front of Dana, because he's watching you. Like maybe on the undercard he's probably watching the main eventers, but he's not really known to watch or pay attention to like the undercard fights. I don't know. I've seen a couple times watching other things going on.
I remember seeing that clip of Dana watching that boxing
the Canelo fight, wasn't it?
The Canelo fight. He said he bet like 100,000 on the Canelo fight. People were recording him watching the Canelo fight while he was had his own card going on. And Dana claims that he paid for it, although it took him an awkwardly long time to be able to respond to the question of whether or not he did or did not pay for it. So, looking forward to this fight. It'll be interesting to see how this one plays out. Next on the main card is Chukkagan versus Maya. Chukkagan is a slight favorite coming into this one. Her last fight was May 2021 with a win by decision against Araujo. She's got that boxing style, and she'll be going up against Maya, whose last fight was in July 2021 with a win by decision against Jessica Ai, after losing the previous fight prior to that to Shevchenko. So she got to fight for the belt in November 2020, and Maya's specialty is BJJ. So how did you break down this fight?
Chukkagan, I've watched a lot of her fights, and every fight I've seen of hers, like, she's gone to decision a lot of time, but she's like a Court Mcgee. You watch it, it's going to be exciting. She's going to be attacking. She's going to be, have good takedown defense. She's not going to get controlled. And I think that's a good thing. She's kind of a taller, lankier fighter, has really good kicks. To me, like, even though she's got a lot of decision wins, like, I always love watching her fight. Like, it's just, one of those girls that you're like, she's athletic, just has good style, good rhythm, good pace, and is still fighting the third round. Maya, her most of her wins are by decision. I would say the energy is opposite for her. Like, I am not excited to watch her at all. Like, most of her losses are by decision. Most of her wins are by decision, and it's like she's got 15 decisions. Like, I don't know. I just it's completely different than Chukkagan for me, where I'm like, yeah, she's fighting a decision, but it's like, she's got a plan. She's figuring it out. She's attacking. She's fighting off whatever. Maya, even though she's fought, a Shevchenko, I just am not excited to watch her at all. Like, I hope Chukkagan wins by decision. So.
Okay, so yeah, I'm not sure that this will be the most exciting fight, but it is the kind of classic matchup of striker versus grappler. But I do have to give Maya some credit. Even though she lost to Shevchenko, I almost feel like it's a win because she lost by decision. And as we've seen Shevchenko just destroy the last
everyone.
several people she's fought against, like not
Moral
getting submitted or
victory.
knocked out by Shevchenko is like in itself almost a
A
victory.
victory, yeah.
I feel like so. I feel like if she can go 5 rounds with Shevchenko, the fact that Chukkagan's gonna end it early, I'd say I don't see that happening. And because of that, I think there's going to be situations that are going to come up where Maya's going to at least have the opportunity to attempt some submissions. And she did just have a win by decision against Jessica Ai, who's no slouch. So in this fight, I'm actually picking the underdog. I'm picking Maya. I think she's fought more recently, and I just get the feeling that she's hungrier right now than Chukkagan. And I think this fight's going to go to the ground at some point, and that's going to favor Maya, and it's going to give her some opportunities to submit Chukkagan. If she's not able to submit her, she'll probably be on her back a lot, and Chukkagan will probably end up with a win by decision. But I'm going to pick Maya on this fight. Next fight is between Royval and Bontrin. Royval's coming in at a pretty decent favorite at -170. His last fight was August 2021, a loss by submission in the second round to Pantoja. He also had a November 2020 KO loss to Moreno, but he did have a September 2020 win against Kattar, France, which was impressive, and in May 2020 had a win by sub against Tim Elliott. So he's definitely fought some top competition in his last several fights. He's had a lot of sub wins, but it seems like strikes have led him to the submissions with Royval. So definitely a very interesting fighter. Looking forward to this one. I like seeing Royval fight. He's going up against Bontrin, whose last fight was in May 2021. It was a win, but I think was later ruled a no contest against Schnell. So I'm not really sure what happened there. And then this is interesting. He had a loss to Kattar, France in March 2021. So both of them have fought Kattar, France. Royval beat Kai, and Bontrin lost to Kai. So I guess according to MMA math, 2 + 2 = 17, and Royval's going to win. But what did you think about this matchup?
I think Royval, a lot of these smaller guys are just super quick. Having fought Brandon Moreno, I'm sure he learned from that. Moreno, current champ right now, going to be fighting for the rematch here in the next in a month or so. I think just the fact that he's been able to hang with him, having fought and having that experience, he's also got a ton of submission wins. He's won like 8 fights by submission. So to me, I think that's what I'm going to keep my eye on with Royval is, Bontrin fought twice last year. He's got a lot of submissions as well, has more than Royval, but I think Royval having been in there with a higher caliber of fighter, I hope that him and Moreno can get that back one day and get it back. I was trying to look up the no contest. It looked like it was a draw that was overturned. It was a unanimous decision. It was a unanimous decision. It says Roger Bontrin showed off a powerful striking, attacking, grappling game in the third round that led him to do a unanimous victory over Matt Schnell. And then, it was overturned and currently listed as a draw. So I think just kind of having that on your record, I'm sure you want to erase that as the last taste people have in their mouth of your performance in the UFC. He's got a lot to prove, and but Royval, I hope, can show why he fought Brandon Moreno, and in Moreno beating him ended up beating the champion twice, and I think hopefully he learns from that. So I would pick Royval by by submission.
Okay, yeah, and there's no one better to lose to than the champ, I guess. And yeah, it would be interesting to see Moreno fight somebody other than
Davison, yeah,
Figueiredo, which I guess he's fighting
for life.
what, the third time now? Yeah, it's just going to be rematches between Moreno and Figueiredo. So, yeah, it would be interesting to see Moreno fight someone else. Although, do you think Royval learned a lot from that loss against Moreno, because he did get KO?
Yeah, and just having fought recently, you know, Bontorin fought in May, Royval fought in August. You know, I think just staying active at this point. Yeah, he's lost by KO, he's lost by submission. Let's see how he bounces back.
Yeah, and so, although I do think momentum definitely comes from coming off a win, you know, when you're fighting someone coming off of a loss, I feel like the psychology is in your favor if you're coming off a win. But in this case, yeah, Royval's a veteran. He's fighting very high-level guys. I feel like this is his turnaround match. He's fast. He has great striking and a decent ground game. So, yeah, I'm also thinking that Royval's gonna get this one done as well.
Yeah, I would say this is the one where I'm like 50-50. Like, I definitely could have picked either one, but yeah, hoping for Royval because, like you said, I don't want to see.
Okay, so
I don't want to see Figueiredo and Moreno fight till the end of time. Like, get somebody in there.
Yeah. So that's interesting. You said you think this is a 50-50, so you think this might be mispriced because the odds makers have Bontorin at a plus 145. So if it's a 50-50, I guess you think there might be some value on betting on Bontorin?
I would say just because he's got like more submission wins. Yeah, his last fight didn't go that well, and Royval's fought more recent, and he's got, you know, decent submission wins as well. But you know, I'm just picking Royval based off activity and, you know, his resume, his most recent resume. Other than that, like, if those two fights weren't there, I would say, like, you know, it's 50-50. But I'm going to go with Royval.
Yeah. Okay. And the next fight is Kelleher versus Sherman. Collier's coming in at a slight favorite at -135. His last fight was in June 2021, a loss by decision to Felipe. And he's fighting Sherman, whose last fight was in August 2021, a loss by decision to Porter. So the guys are both coming in off of losses. Collier's not been super active. I looked at the stats, and it looks like he's had about 3 fights in the past 4 years. Sherman's had about 8 fights in the past 4 years. So Sherman's definitely been a lot more active. And I'm curious, how was your analysis on this matchup?
I saw Kelleher, like, in like just looking at pictures of them and looking at their records. You know, Collier's got 2 decision losses recently, and looking at his schedule, he's fighting about every 6 months. But you know, that's not active enough. Like, you know, the last couple fights, Sherman, his last 2 losses were by decision, but he's got so many wins by KO, TKO. Like, when you like put it together and you're like, yeah, that guy is huge. Like, 14 wins by KO, TKO, and I'm just like, just looking at their builds and looking at their activity level, it's hard not to pick Sherman. Even though he's, you know, the underdog, like, barely, you know, I think Kelleher just isn't active enough, doesn't have the power, doesn't have the size, the strength. I'd be surprised if Sherman lost. I would expect him to continue his KO, TKO win count.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned size, so it may actually look like Sherman is bigger, but I'm looking at where they came in on the scales. It looks like Kelleher actually came in about 264, 1 pound under the limit for heavyweights, which is ridiculous. Sherman came in at 256, but I actually think that works to Sherman's favor. I also would pick Sherman to win on this one, so I think this might be a good time to bet on the underdog. I think Sherman's got a little bit more speed, which makes sense because he is a little bit lighter, and also he's just been way more active. So I think just based on having a little bit more speed and a lot more activity, I would go with Sherman to win in this one as well.
Yeah, it's I'm watching the weigh-in video real quick, and Collier is definitely stockier. Sherman is a taller build, but they are. Someone's gonna get knocked out. You're not. Like I'm watching the weigh-in video.
Let's get knocked out on
Yeah,
this
I was
fight.
watching it, and I was
Yeah.
like, "Oh man, they're huge." Like you mentioned, I didn't know that he came out in 1 pound under. That's if yeah. He might get knocked out. He might knock him out, or he might get knocked out because he's so tired because he's carrying just 1 pound under the weight limit.
Yeah, looking forward to this fight.
I could see this. For me, if we're gonna do random things, this would be my pick for fight of the night, like or KO of the night. Like if they're just two big guys, it's gonna probably happen. So performance bonus call on a fight, it's gonna be this one, KO.
Oh wow, okay. Performance bonus call. Okay.
Spicing it up.
And the main fight is between Kattar and Chikadze. Really looking forward to this fight. I can't wait to see what's going to happen. The odds are definitely in favor of Chikadze. He's coming in at a negative 240. But I'm not so sure that those odds are quite where they should be. I was kind of surprised that Kattar came in at such an underdog at plus 200. Chikadze is coming off a win against Barboza by KO in August 2021. He has KO wins against Cub Swanson in May of last year and Jamie Simmons in November 2020. So he's had 2 fights in 2021, 4 fights in 2020. Chikadze seems like he's really hungry. He definitely looks mean in his fights, and he's got that Giga kick, which is destroying people. So I can't wait to see what's going to happen in this fight. Kattar is coming off a loss by decision to Holloway in January of last year. He had a win by decision against Ige in July 2020, a win by KO against Jeremy Stevens in May 2020. The thing I'm really worried about, I guess, for Kattar in this fight is how much damage he took in that fight against Holloway. It's good to be involved in record-breaking fights, but not when you're the one who's, getting a record for blocking the most punches with your face.
So one-sided.
He took a lot of damage
Hundreds.
in that fight against
Hundreds
Holloway.
of punches.
It was a year ago. And they're punches to the head. So Kattar's got amazing boxing skills. I mean, Holloway went into God mode, and we hadn't seen, I don't think, Kattar in any fight where it was one-sided like that when it comes to striking matchups. So I'm really curious. We've kind of got the boxer, I feel like, versus the kicker. This is probably going to be decided, I feel like, in stand-up. What do you think?
Calvin Kattar, before he fought Holloway, I was like, this guy is solid. Jeremy Stevens, anytime anyone fights him, I'm like, they're going to get knocked out. And he knocked Jeremy Stevens out. And Jeremy Stevens is one of those guys where I'm just like, what he's going to do. And to finish him that way, to me, I was like, okay, this guy is a great challenger. Definitely very tough in how he fought the Holloway fight. Like, I don't know many people who could take that many punches, who would want to keep taking punches, who would still be standing after taking punches. It's like one thing to want to or whatever, but like his body took it. I don't know how. I've never seen anyone. I'm not a fan of Conor McGregor, but his fight against Eddie Alvarez was a smooth demolition of a person, and this to me was more impressive because it was just over and over. So I wonder how that's going to play into Calvin's psychology. Like, Max was clowning in there with him, pointing at the audience, laughing, just doing whatever and toying with him nonstop. And Calvin has legit boxing and great movement. So with Chikadze, his fight against Cub Swanson, I picked Cub Swanson to win by KO. And, I picked Barboza to win by KO, but he Barboza. Like, I and Cub too. It was like within a minute that he beat Cub, like 30 seconds, something like that. It was something super fast. And so this is just a person that he can kick hard, and even if you block it, even if you know it's coming, I don't see how Calvin can win. I think he just took too much damage his last fight. I think the only difference will be Giga will go to the body much more than Holloway did, and just Giga's got that momentum. That dude kicks so hard. I haven't seen him, like, grown men double over or get just beat that bad in a while. So we'll see. Giga by body kick.
Giga by Giga kick.
Giga kick, yeah.
And I think Chikadze's got like you said, he's got the incredible momentum. He's on a crazy win streak. His confidence is soaring. He wants that belt. He's hungry, and he's got the unstoppable Giga kick. So I can't wait to see this fight and see how it plays out.
No, absolutely, and it'll be interesting to go back afterwards and see how right or how wrong we were. Because I think also what's going to affect it is, I don't think a lot of people realize this, is the time of this. This is at 1 o'clock, right? And is this in Vegas? Right?
Yes. Yeah.
So just think about, like, just how everyone's used to fighting at night. Like, just how that's all thrown off everything. And those 1 o'clock fights are weird. I don't know why they do them. But whatever. Hey, man. Like, get to watch fights and then your day. So, like, you got, like, 10 hours left of your day.
Oh, you know what? I see here that the time actually has changed to 2 p.m. For the prelims to start and 4 p.m. for the main card. So it's probably because of the number of fights that were canceled. So it is actually starting at 2 p.m. The main card starts at 4 p.m. So the fight will probably, the main fight will probably
6 or
still
7.
take place around 6 or 7 at night. But I'm not sure. Do you know where Chikadze is training out of? Is he going to have any time changes to deal with, or?
I assume he's from Georgia. He's Georgian. Let me see. Let's see what.
I don't know what time it is in Georgia right now, and that's not Georgia, United States.
He's with King's MMA, which is Huntington Beach, my hometown. So that's Rafael Cordero.
So he's not gonna have to deal with the time.
That's where Mike Tyson has been training currently. Wow, that's very impressive. I guess because Rafael Cordero was one of the founders of Shootbox and has King's MMA in Huntington Beach now, and I think just quite a bit of fighters in that camp. So it's gonna be hard to pick against Giga.